All right, welcome in. Hope everybody out there is having a fantastic weekend. Coming up on today's San Francisco 49ers Report, over the last few Fridays, I've been joining Larry Krueger on his show, The Krueg Show, at 10:45 a.m. Pacific. Been doing radio in the Bay Area for a long time, and now his YouTube channel is off to a terrific start with a lot of success. I'll put the link to subscribe to his channel down in the description of this video, but I've really enjoyed making appearances over there. I think we've been able to give some people some good 49ers analysis that's been engaging and informative. So coming up on the 49ers Report, this platform, just thought we'd give you some more content. So this is going to be the first of two videos coming your way today. The first one, great conversation about Brock Purdy and some staggering, shocking numbers that he's been able to put up to start his career, which now spans about 17 games. So stay tuned for that. And then later, a separate video. What's the biggest concern for San Francisco going up against this Buccaneers team that's going to be feisty on Sunday? Watch party coming your way on Sunday right here on the 49ers Report, the best place to experience game day outside of being at the actual game. We'll see you then, so make sure you subscribe. And for now, two videos from my appearance with Larry Krueger on Friday.
Let's get into Niners Bucks. And to me, I asked Chris Forster yesterday about this Buccaneer defensive line. And, you can kind of tell when these guys are impressed as opposed to when they're just kind of going through the motions, right? Because you ask any coach about the team they're playing this week, and they're all going to make them sound great. Oh, yep. You kidding me? This guy, the tackles are fierce. They play the run. The edges burn the edge. The defensive ends burn the edges, and we got our hands full with these guys. That's just like standard fare. But I could tell by the way that Forster was talking about this D-line that he has legitimate concerns and respect for, this front four: Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey, Shaq Barrett, Logan Hall. They're unique, right? Shaq's a burner off the edge. Logan Hall is almost like a five technique, playing the five technique in their 34 front. Vita Vea is a nose guard, but they lined him up 2 weeks ago against Tennessee off defensive end, and he got a sack. And then Kalijah Cansey is kind of like a poor man's Aaron Donald if you watch him at Pitt. He's just a monster, and he's got quickness and speed. So to me, this is the big question coming into this game. Can the Niner offensive line that has a banged up McKivitz, no Aaron Banks, a banged up Trent Williams, and kind of an inconsistent Spencer Burford, can they block this Tampa Bay front? What do you think?
I think this game comes at a really good time for San Francisco because they established their momentum back against Jacksonville with a really dominant all-around performance. In fact, I really like what they did against Jacksonville from a three phases standpoint, how they dominated that game over a quality opponent that was hot after facing adversity coming out of the bye, as compared to that Cowboys victory when they put up 40 points and were really impressive in that game as well. But this Tampa Bay team is very feisty, and they provide a lot of tests and challenges to the opponent. And I think they're going to pose a very difficult test for San Francisco at a time where, okay, they beat Jacksonville. They're looking to get back on track, but this is a quality opponent where if you beat them, they're 4-5. They're fighting for one of those wild card spots in the NFL playoffs. Then that's a quality win on the resume. And you look at Tampa Bay and you think about Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield's their quarterback. He's been very mediocre to bad throughout his career with some good moments in there as well. And then you look at their head coach in Todd Bowles, who I like. He went to Temple. He interviewed for the Temple job a few years ago. I went to Temple. So there's that type of relationship there, but I think he's more so of a defensive coordinator as compared to a head coach. And it's not like they do anything from a scheme perspective offensively where you're like, wow, that's really, really creative. It can take the league by storm. They're just a solid all-around football team that shouldn't have lost to the Texans a few weeks ago if it wasn't without those heroics from C.J. Stroud, who's playing unbelievable football under D'Amico Ryans. But when you do a deep dive into the numbers for how Tampa Bay plays and the type of challenges that they present, they're 8th in points per game allowed at under 20, 19 to be exact. So I think that's a really good spot to be at in today's NFL that has become increasingly offensive happy. Opponents' points per play, they're 6th in the NFL. They have the number 1 red zone defense. So when teams get inside the 20, they're only giving a touchdown up on 32% of those red zone trips. And then in opposing touchdowns per game, 1.9. And then lastly, to round this out before I go back to you, Larry, and that really is the backbone of this conversation, their strength is their defensive line. The 49ers' biggest weakness is their offensive line. And another reason why I think this game comes at a really good time is because as you get deeper into the season and you start to project ahead and you look at the potential opponents that you have in the playoffs, and then you have those 2 Seattle games in 3 weeks. I like Seattle's defense. I like their defensive line. A team like the Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, Dallas Cowboys, they all have really good defensive lines. And I think that this Niners offensive line, especially the right side of it with Colton McKivitz, with Spencer Burford, which has given up 75%, I think, of the Niners' pressures this year. That could be the thing that holds this team back. So this is a good test against Tampa Bay to see how they can block against a quality front that has all those players that you noted.
You know, Colton McKivitz has practiced the last couple of days, and I believe he's practicing again today. So then you've got probably McKivitz starting at right tackle. But I asked Forster, you know, is it Jalen Moore? Is it Matt Pryor? He said Matt Pryor is the first man up if McKivitz can't go. But Jalen Moore played well sitting in for Trent Williams at left tackle. So they won't stay with Pryor if Pryor struggles. The interesting thing to me is how much better do you think the Niner line will be, Chase, if Banks comes back from the turf toe and they can slide Feliciano into either a share at right guard with Burford or just, you know, replace Burford in the short term with Feliciano at right guard?
I do like that adjustment, and I think that that's going to take place once Aaron Banks is coming off of that turf toe. I think he'll be at left guard, and then John Feliciano, who actually had the highest Pro Football Focus grade for a guard on the Niners this year against Jacksonville, will then slide to right guard. And a lot of people have asked me, Chase, they're thinking about going with a right guard rotation of Spencer Burford and John Feliciano. That seems very interesting. That's odd. It's actually not. San Francisco has done this before. They actually did it with Daniel Brunskill, and it did work out to their favor, where Brunskill played some really good football. That's why he landed that deal with the Tennessee Titans in NFL free agency to team back up with Rand Carthon, who's now the general manager and was in this front office since 2017 with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. So I think Feliciano will help there at right guard. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets a majority of the snaps there. I think Burford does have ability, but he's just failed to break through, and the pressures along that right side of the line of scrimmage have been very problematic. And if you're thinking late in the game, playoff matchup against an opponent with a really good defensive line, if you can't pass protect and Brock Purdy is running for his life, which he kind of had to do a couple of times against Jacksonville, that can halt your offensive momentum. That can stop drives. That can turn a field goal into you having to punt right around that midfield area. So I think Feliciano helps. The big question mark, what happens with Colton McKivitz? Because I think that he'll continue to struggle, because I just don't think he's a starting right tackle in this league. But at least you're able to kind of put duct tape on a hole in a boat and you go Feliciano there at right guard, and hoping that that at least helps you out a little bit.
You know, one of the things that I'd heard this summer was that the Niners went after Feliciano partially because with the New York Giants, he had played well head-to-head against the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's accurate. I never went back and looked at those films and saw exactly how he matched up. But I'll say this, Feliciano's kind of a old school brawler, really broad, really tough, smart guy. I loved him at Miami going way, way back with the Hurricanes, and he's been in the league for a long time. You know, I will be interested to see, you know, because they do like Burford. Do they try to keep Burford in there part-time, or do they just say, you know what, no, we're going to Feliciano and Burford's maybe the future at right guard? I think that will be something to watch. And then, of course, the big assumption here is that Aaron Banks comes back, but it's turf toe, and everybody knows turf toe is just kind of a random deal. You know, one of the things I thought was interesting this week, I had a chance to talk to Steve Wilkes. I asked him, I said, you know, what's the key to defending screen passes? I mean, the Niners still are giving up a lot of yards on these screen passes, and Shanahan has suggested, hey, when you rush as hard as they do up the field in their wide nine, that there's sometimes extra space, that when you play a lot of zone coverage behind, there can be some extra space. I asked Wilkes about it. He's like, man, you just got to whoop ass on the guy in front of you. And he said it a couple times. What do you think? I mean, I saw Tampa throw a screen pass to White, the running back against Tennessee, and I think he went like 50 yards for a touchdown. The Eagles, I could see throwing a lot of screen passes. I could see screen passes being, thrown the Niners' way a lot in the weeks ahead, just simply because haven't proven that they can consistently defend the screen pass. What do you think? How much does Philly run screen passes? And do you think that's going to be a major part of Sirianni's game plan in Week 13?
Philadelphia doesn't run enough screen passes, I don't think. Like coming up under Andy Reid, the amount of dump-off passes from Donovan McNabb to Brian Westbrook resulted in so many massive plays, and they actually have some good receiving backs. DeAndre Swift and Kenneth Gainwell. Boston Scott as a backup, very capable of catching balls out of the backfield, yet they don't really swing it out much on some of those screen passes to those running backs. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert have been so good, so I'm sure that is a part of that game planning. But that is one thing that I noticed for the Niners last week against Jacksonville that was probably the biggest concern during that game because, they came in 26th against the rush. They stopped the rush. They came in being unable to sack the quarterback, 18th in the NFL with 18. They had 5. During that losing streak, they weren't forcing turnovers, and they were turning the football over a lot, 7 during 3 games. They forced 4 and gave it away 0 times. The back end, I thought, was good and synced up with the front. The defensive line for the Niners was absolutely dominant. So they were able to really check off the boxes with all of the worries that we had going into that game that you and I kind of talked about last week, especially the ground game. But the only way that the Jags were able to get any type of explosive plays or even to just move the chains, because that's how elite San Francisco played in Florida last Sunday, it was via the screen pass. And that is something that Tampa Bay does like to do. And it's an easy throw for Baker Mayfield to try to get him into a rhythm. And it's a little bit surprising, right? Because the Niners are so athletic and they are so fast, and they have some freaks who can range sideline to sideline on this defense, especially at linebacker with Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. Yet, when those blockers get out in front, it seems as though San Francisco is at a disadvantage. And for whatever reason, everybody is always blocked up, and there's not that one player who's able to slip through with that instinctual play to stop that screen pass for a minimal gain. So if I'm Tampa Bay, that's one of the points of emphasis that I have for game planning this week. I'm noticing, okay, we don't want Baker to have deep drops, 7 drops, even 5-step drops, because this pass rush can ruin the game, and they've given up a lot of sacks recently, have the Buccaneers. The corners, as long as the pass rush is causing havoc up front and they're dominating the line of scrimmage, they're going to be able to do their job. I love the wrinkle last week with Ambry Thomas on the outside, Womack in the slot, and benching Isaiah Oliver, who had been awful. But that's the one thing that has been a little bit worrisome for San Francisco is those screen passes that they're giving up.
One of the interesting parts, I think, of last week's game was the adjustment. I mean, there was so much talk about Steve Wilks and where the hell he was going to sit or stand, and that mattered, I think, very little. What mattered a lot was that they made a huge lineup change.
Yep.
Ambry Thomas played 46 snaps at the outside cornerback spot. Isaiah Oliver, who had been playing a ton in the slot, played a total of 3 snaps. So Lenore moved inside. Ambry moved outside. Ambry's better in man-to-man coverage. They played more man-to-man coverage. He's just a better cover guy overall than Oliver. Surprise, surprise. You take a guy who runs like in the 4.6s in Isaiah Oliver off the field and replace him with Ambry Thomas, who ran a 4.4 flat coming out of Michigan, and suddenly you have better speed, tighter coverage, and you even have a guy who's a little bit more of a hitter. Thomas is a better force against the run as a hitter. Even Wilks admitted that yesterday. Are they effectively replacing Oliver? I know they downplayed it this week. Steve, said, hey, Oliver will play. And, Oliver, it's not like Oliver's banished. But 3 snaps and Ambry, playing full-time outside and the way it worked, it seems like they've banished Oliver. What's your read on that, Chase?
I agree. And them not really committing to that, I think, is gamemanship to keep the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on their heels a little bit as they prepare for San Francisco this week. I thought it was hilarious when Kyle Shanahan was like, yeah, we're not sure if we're going to commit to this full time. when Isaiah Oliver did go in, we thought he played really well. It's like he played 3 snaps. You didn't evaluate how Isaiah Oliver played, and I think all those snaps came in garbage time. So I think this is the move moving forward for San Francisco. I think it's the move that they have to stick with. And this is the type of change that we did talk about when we were having the conversation about maybe going after a cornerback at the NFL trade deadline. We had said, okay, if they go all in for Patrick Surtain, if they make that trade for Jalen Johnson, and the interest there was real from everything that I've heard and everything that was reported out there, they checked in on Jalen Johnson. And we said, you acquire a corner like that, what happens is Charvarius Ward on one side, outside corner, and then that other player is on the other side, and then you move Diamador Lenore into the slot. Now, they traded for Chase Young. They didn't trade for a corner. Instead, what they did was they put Ambry Thomas on the outside, who I thought played really well. He gave up 14 total yards. He allowed, I think, 1 catch. The red zone sequence against Calvin Ridley was really impressive before he had the strip of Christian Kirk and the fumble recovery and what should have been a 96-yard return for a touchdown if the Niners didn't come off the bench there and get penalized. For Ambry, it's all about consistency. And if he's able to be consistent, he has length. He has that long speed. He has athleticism. We saw how Steve Wilks was fired up interacting with Ambry Thomas on the sideline, which I thought was a really cool moment with all of the conversations about Wilks moving to the sideline. To me, it looked like Wilks was saying, this is the type of player that you can be. You just have to be more consistent. And let's be real. In 2021, down the stretch, Ambry Thomas was the Niners' other outside corner, and I thought he played really, really well. He had the game-clinching interception in Week 18 against the Rams to send the Niners to the playoffs when he picked off Matthew Stafford. I thought he played well in that Dallas game. He missed the Green Bay game and then came back, I believe, for the NFC Championship game. But he was good really after that Tennessee game, which kickstarted that on Thursday Night Football, and Garoppolo threw that awful pick late in the game. But there's that change that I really liked. I think Isaiah Oliver, yes, is getting benched. What I also really liked, more 5-man fronts. You had Chase Young and Randy Gregory lining up at defensive tackle. You use their quickness against slower interior offensive linemen. That's a wrinkle that I want to continue to see as well, because I really did think that paid off for San Francisco in getting after Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, no question about it. And having Gregory and Chase Young has enabled them to, take Drake Jackson, put him on IR, hopefully get him healthier. They released Austin Bryant this week. They signed Spencer Wagee back to the practice squad. So they've kind of redid their defensive end look.